Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unfiltered and Unapologetic. I'm your host, Caitlin Gil-Soto, and this is a space where we have honest conversations about faith, wealth, wellness, relationships, personal growth, the beliefs we inherit, the patterns we repeat, and what it really looks like to build a life that feels aligned with who we're becoming. And if you've been here before, thank you for continuing to come back and have these conversations with me. And if you're new here, welcome. I hope you find something in today's conversation that makes you reflect, helps you understand yourself a little differently, or maybe puts words to something you've been feeling but haven't really known how to explain. Because that's what I really want this space to be, a place where we can slow down for a bit, be honest with ourselves, question some of the things we've been taught, and become a little more intentional about what we want to carry forward and what maybe doesn't belong in the next version of our lives. So, whether you're listening while you're driving to work, going for a walk, at the gym, making dinner, getting ready for the day, or maybe you're just winding down and taking a little time for yourself. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I'm really glad that you're here. And today I want to talk about something that I don't think we always recognize in ourselves. I've been thinking a lot about strength lately. Not physical strength, but the kind of strength that we attach to people. You know, the person who always figures it out, the one everybody calls, the responsible one, the one who somehow keeps things moving when they have a lot going on themselves. And maybe while I'm describing that person, somebody immediately came to mind. Or maybe that person is you. And maybe you don't even think of yourself that way. Maybe you've never called yourself the strong one. You just know that when something needs to get done, you figure it out. When something goes wrong, you handle it. When somebody needs you, you show up. And when you need something, you usually find a way to handle that too. I think for a lot of us, being strong became part of our identity before we even realized it was happening. Maybe you had to grow up quickly. Maybe you were the responsible child. Maybe you were the sibling everybody depended on. Maybe you learned early how to read the room, solve problems, take care of yourself, or make things easier for everybody around you. Or maybe you watched the adults in your life work incredibly hard, sacrifice, survive, and figure things out without much support. And somewhere along the way you learned that's what strong people do. They figure it out. They keep going. They don't become a burden. And I think being first gen can add another layer to this too. When you know how much the people before you sacrificed, sometimes struggling with something can almost make you feel guilty. You think about what they went through, what they had to survive, what they had to build with fewer resources or opportunities, and suddenly whatever you're dealing with doesn't feel big enough to ask for help with. So you push through it. You tell yourself you'll figure it out, and after a while, independence isn't just something you're proud of. It becomes part of who you believe you have to be. But I want to be clear about something. There's nothing wrong with being independent. There's nothing wrong with liking to do things yourself or knowing that you can depend on yourself. But I think there's a difference between I can do this myself and I have to do this myself. I think that's where it gets interesting because sometimes independence really is independence and sometimes it's protection. And sometimes underneath, I'll just do it myself is if I don't need anybody, nobody gets the opportunity to disappoint me. And that can be hard to admit because from the outside, it still looks like strength. You're productive, you're responsible, you're getting things done. Nobody necessarily sees anything wrong. You might not even see anything wrong until you realize how uncomfortable it feels when you're the one who needs something. Actually, I have a prompt here for you guys, and I want you to really think about this one. Do you like being the strong one, or does being the strong one feel safer than needing someone else? Because there's a difference. When you're helping someone, you're in control of what you give. When you're fixing the problem, you know what your role is. When you're the person everybody depends on, there's a certain safety in knowing where you stand. But needing someone else requires something different. It requires vulnerability. It requires you to say, I don't know, or I'm struggling, or can you help me? And then you have to trust that the other person is actually going to show up. For someone who has been disappointed before, doing it yourself can feel a lot safer than taking that chance. So I don't think the answer is becoming less independent. I think it's becoming more aware of why you're choosing independence in the first place. Am I doing this myself because I genuinely want to, or am I doing it myself because depending on someone else makes me uncomfortable? That's something only you can answer. But if you're realizing that you might do this more than you thought, I want you to remind yourself, I can be capable and still receive help. One doesn't cancel out the other. And I think some of this also comes from what we've been taught strength is supposed to look like. Because depending on how you grew up, your culture, your family, and even your gender, you may have received very different messages about what it means to be strong. For a lot of women, strength can look like taking care of everybody, keeping everything moving, being responsible, being emotionally available, building the career, helping the family, remembering what everyone needs, and somehow still finding the time to take care of yourself. We're constantly hearing about women who do it all. But the older I get, the more I question why we're expecting anyone to do it all in the first place. And for a lot of men, the expectations can look different. Provide, protect, fix the problem, don't complain, don't show too much emotion, figure it out, keep going. Of course, this isn't every man or every woman. Our families, cultures, and experiences are different. But even though those expectations can look different, they can lead to a very similar belief. If I need help, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think that's worth questioning. Because a woman shouldn't have to exhaust herself to take care of everyone to prove she's capable. And a man shouldn't have to suffer quietly to prove he's strong. We all need support. The way we need it might look different, and the way we're comfortable receiving it might look different, but none of us were meant to go through every part of life completely alone. And this is where I think it's worth checking in with yourself. Because maybe you're listening and thinking, okay, but I really don't consider myself the strong one. So, let me ask you something. When you're overwhelmed, who knows? When you don't know what to do, who do you call? When you're having a hard time, do you tell someone? And when someone offers you help, do you actually let them? Or is your automatic response, no, I'm good, or don't worry about me, or I'll figure it out? Because sometimes being the strong one doesn't look like walking around telling everyone how independent you are. Sometimes it looks like never letting anybody see when you need something. And I think that's part of why this pattern can be so hard to recognize in ourselves. We don't necessarily think we're pushing people away. We think we're handling our business. We don't think we're afraid of support. We think we're being independent. And sometimes that's exactly what we're doing. But sometimes there's more underneath it. And I think another reason why some of us resist support is because we've confused being supported with being rescued. And those aren't the same thing. Being supported doesn't mean somebody else becomes responsible for your life. And it doesn't mean giving up your independence. It doesn't mean someone has to fix your problems. Sometimes support is advice. Sometimes it's somebody listening to you without trying to solve anything. Sometimes it's letting someone teach you something you don't know. And sometimes it's accepting an introduction or an opportunity. Sometimes it's letting someone take one thing off your plate when you already have 10 other things going on. And sometimes it's literally just having someone sit beside you while you figure it out yourself. You can still be responsible for your own life and allow other people to contribute to it. So, I have another prompt for you. Have you ever confused receiving help with losing your independence? Really think about how you react when somebody offers you something. Do you receive it, or do you immediately feel like you need to say no, return the favor, prove you could have done it yourself, or make sure they know you don't need them? Because that can even tell us something. Maybe receiving support is something you have to practice. And if it is, remind yourself. Receiving support doesn't take away my independence. It just means I'm allowing myself to be supported too. There's another side of being the strong one that I think can be harder to admit. Sometimes you start feeling like nobody ever shows up for me. Maybe you're the person everybody calls when something goes wrong. You're the listener, you're checking in, you're giving advice, you're helping people work through their problems, you're remembering what's going on in everyone else's life. And then, when you're the one having a hard time, you look around and realize you don't feel like you have that same support. And sometimes the truth is that the relationships around you are really one-sided. Sometimes you've become so reliable that people have gotten comfortable receiving from you without thinking about what you might need in return. And that's worth paying attention to. But since we're being honest with ourselves in this episode, there's another side of this that I think we have to look at too. Have you actually given people the opportunity to show up for you? Because you can be surrounded by people who love you and still never really let them know when you're struggling. You say you're fine, you change the subject, you deal with it privately. Someone asks if you need anything and you automatically say no. And then a part of you still wishes somebody would just know. I understand that. And there's something really comforting about being known well enough that someone notices when you're not okay. But people can't always know what we don't communicate. And I think this is where we have to take some responsibility for the way we participate in our own relationships too. So I have a prompt here for you guys. Do the relationships in your life give you somewhere to land to? And if your immediate answer is no, I want you to go one step further. Is it because the people around you aren't showing up? Or is there a part of you that doesn't let them? Maybe it's both. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about noticing the pattern. Because you can't ask for deeper support while continuing to hide every part of yourself that needs it. And that doesn't mean you have to tell everyone everything you're going through. Sometimes it just means being a little more honest in the moments when your instinct is to say, I'm fine. It can start really small. You can say, actually, today was hard. Or, can I talk to you about something? Or, I don't need advice. I just need you to listen. Or even, yeah, actually, I could use some help. Those might seem like simple things to say, but if you're used to handling everything on your own, they can feel really vulnerable. And that's the pattern we're trying to notice. Not whether you're capable of handling things yourself, but whether you're giving yourself the option not to. And the more I thought about this, the more I realized this pattern doesn't only affect our relationships, we bring it into other parts of our lives too. We bring it to work, we bring it to school, and we definitely bring it into money. How many times have you sat there trying to figure something out for way longer than necessary because you didn't want to ask somebody? You could have asked the question 20 minutes ago, but instead you're Googling, you're watching videos, you're rereading something 5 times, you're telling yourself, I should know this. And I think that word, should, gets us into trouble sometimes because who said you should already know? Nobody comes into this world knowing how to invest. Nobody automatically knows how to negotiate a salary, understand taxes, build credit, buy property, start a business, or navigate a career. Somebody taught them, or they asked, they researched, they found a mentor, or they made mistakes and learned along the way. And I think being first gen can actually make this especially complicated because sometimes you're walking into rooms that are completely new to your family. You're learning systems that nobody around you had the opportunity to teach you. Maybe you're trying to build wealth differently. Maybe you're entering a new career. Maybe you're learning about investing, or maybe you want to own a property. Maybe you're sitting in a classroom or in a meeting, hearing words everybody else seems to understand, and you're thinking, am I the only person here who doesn't know what they're talking about? Probably not. But somebody has to be willing to ask the question. So I have another prompt here for you guys. Where are you making your life harder because you're embarrassed to admit that you don't really know something yet? And really think about that. Because sometimes asking for help isn't about emotional support at all. Sometimes it's, can you explain this to me? How did you learn how to do this? Can you look at this and tell me what I'm missing? Do you know somebody I should talk to? And I think there's strength in being able to say, I don't know yet. Nah, I don't know, so I don't belong here. Nah, I don't know, so everyone else must be smarter than me. Just, I don't know yet. Because asking questions is part of learning. Using resources is part of growing. Having mentors is part of growing. And allowing someone to teach you doesn't make your accomplishment any less yours. So, if you're entering a room you've never been in before, learning something nobody in your family could teach you, or becoming a version of yourself you've never been before, remind yourself, I don't have to know everything to be worthy of the opportunity to learn it. And of course, I can't have this conversation without talking about faith because we'll pray, God help me, God guide me, God show me what to do. And then sometimes help shows up, and our first instinct is, no, I'm good, I got it. And when I really think about that, it's kind of interesting because sometimes we're asking God for support while still trying to control exactly what that support is supposed to look like. We want the answer, we want direction, we want the opportunity, but receiving it might require us to trust someone, ask a question, accept help, or admit that we can't figure something out completely on our own. And I think there's something deeper there. We talk a lot about surrender when it comes to faith. Usually, we think about surrender as letting go of control, of the timeline, of the outcome. But maybe surrender is also learning how to receive guidance without needing to have everything figured out first, to receive help without immediately feeling guilty, to receive rest without feeling like you have to earn it, to receive an opportunity without convincing yourself you're not ready for it, and even to receive love without constantly questioning what you have to do in return. That's hard when you're used to being the giver because giving can feel comfortable. Receiving puts you in a different direction. It asks you to open your hands instead of always being the person reaching out to everyone else. So, here's a question I've been thinking about. What if some of the support you've been asking God for requires you to actually let yourself receive it? Maybe you don't have to understand exactly why something or someone showed up when they did. Maybe you don't have to prove you could have figured it out without them. Maybe you can simply say, thank you, and receive it. Because I don't want to pray for support and then be so committed to being independent that I don't recognize when it comes. I don't have to control how God chooses to support me. And I think that's what I want to leave us with today. Not the idea that being independent is bad, not that you suddenly need to start asking everybody for help, and definitely not that everybody deserves access to the vulnerable parts of you. They don't. Part of growth is also having discernment about who is safe enough to receive those parts of you. But I do think it's worth noticing what happens when you are the person who needs something, because that's where some of these patterns become visible. Do you reach out? Do you disappear? Do you become even more productive? Do you convince yourself it's not that serious? Do you tell everybody you're fine and deal with it privately? Do you automatically assume nobody will understand? Or maybe you don't even think about asking for help because doing it yourself has become so normal that asking doesn't cross your mind. That's the shadow work part of this. That's the shadow work part of this. It's not just looking at what other people have failed to give you. It's being willing to look at what you have taught yourself not to need. So, I have one last prompt for you guys, and I want you to take this one with you after the episode is over. What are you carrying right now that you don't have to carry alone? Don't force an answer, just notice what comes up. Maybe it's something happening at work, maybe it's school, maybe it's money, maybe it's your family, maybe it's something emotionally heavy that you've been keeping completely to yourself. Or maybe you realize you're actually okay asking for support in one part of your life, but completely shut down in another. Just notice it, because awareness gives you a choice. You can still choose to handle something yourself, but now you're choosing it because that's what you want, not because you've convinced yourself it's the only option you have. And maybe the goal isn't to stop being strong. I don't think that's the goal at all. Maybe it's realizing the strength doesn't have to be the only version of you that people get to see. You can be capable and still have moments where you don't know what to do. You can be independent and still have people you lean on. You can be the person everybody depends on and still allow yourself to need people too. So, I'll leave you with the question that started this whole conversation. Who supports the strong one? But maybe the question underneath that is more important. Who have you allowed yourself to depend on? And before we close, I want to take the moment to do our usual prayer. So put your hand on your chest and take a deep breath. Dear God, thank you for the strength you've given me for every season you've carried me through. Thank you for giving me the ability to keep going, to learn, to grow, and to become the person I am today. But God, help me recognize the places where my strength has become something I hide behind. Show me where independence has become protection. Show me where fear of disappointment, rejection, or being a burden has made me believe that it's safer to do everything on my own. Give me the wisdom to know when I need to carry something myself and when it's okay to ask for help. Give me discernment about who I allow into the vulnerable parts of my life. Surround me with people where love, care, and support can flow both ways. Help me communicate what I need instead of always saying that I'm fine. And when you place people, opportunities, guidance, or resources in my life, Help me recognize them. Teach me how to receive without guilt. Teach me how to rest without feeling like I have to earn it. And remind me that accepting support doesn't take away from my strength. I don't have to prove that I'm capable by exhausting myself. I trust you with what I'm carrying. I trust you with the people you place in my life. And I trust that I was never meant to figure out every part of life alone. Amen. If today's conversation resonated with you, I hope it reminded you that it's never too late to learn something you were never taught. Maybe for you that means learning how to ask for help. Maybe it means learning how to receive. Or maybe it's simply noticing the places where you've gotten so used to being strong that you forgot you're allowed to be supported too. If you've enjoyed today's episode, I'd really appreciate it if you shared it with someone who might need to hear it too. And if you've been enjoying the podcast, leaving a rating or review is one of the best ways to help these conversations reach more people. You can also follow me on Instagram at Unfiltered Unapologetic Pod, and it's also the same for TikTok. And you can find more resources through my Stan store linked in my Instagram bio and in the show notes. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Take some time this week to pay attention to where you automatically say I'm good, even when maybe you're not. And remember, being strong doesn't mean you always have to be the one carrying everything. I'll see you in the next episode.